Good morning, traders. Steve Gans coming to you from Big Bear Mountain in Southern California. I'm up here for the week with the family. Anyhow, just taking a look through our positions. So this Apple position is decaying. Now, Apple has some large announcements coming up starting tomorrow. So that could have some impact on this, and I need to keep an eye on it. Now, one of the impacts I'm hoping for is not a significant amount of price movement, but once they start with their announcements, I think this should start decaying a little bit faster. This is not unlike an earnings report at this time where there's some expected news coming out that's keeping that volatility higher. Once that news comes out, the volatility should release, and ideally we want that volatility to release and not have a major price movement one way or the other. So that's what I'm going to be looking for here on Apple, but it may need to be adjusted depending on how that plays out. This particular trade here with DJT, again, not much we can do on this one, just letting it decay. There is very little risk here on the downside. When this trade started, there was zero risk on both sides. When I had the opportunity to take off a couple call spreads, I did do that, which did interject a slight amount of downside risk, and it is possible that this trade could experience that. But I'll see how this plays out. Again, because the bid-ask spreads are so wide in this, there's not a lot of opportunity to adjust this one. This particular trade here, the SPX trade, this is working out fine, although it's been a little whipsawed. It started off as a flat fly, and then the market ripped up on us. I had to open up the upside, then the market pulled back. I closed that upside back up, then the market ripped up on us again. This one has been bouncing around quite a bit, but it's got a pretty nice range on it now, 5,400 down to about 5,250. So if our market can tread around in that general range here for another week or so, this should get into some profitability as well. And then Rut Trade is holding up fine. I thinned out two of the butterflies on this, which basically makes this long call a little more potent, if you will, in the event of a run-up. Now, the rut is looking a little weak here. We'll look at that in a moment. And if it does stay weak or get a little weaker, I may need to consider a little bit of an adjustment here. And then finally, we have the Fortnite wheel strategy that was launched last week, selling a put. That's doing well. Not much activity happens on this. We just wait for that to decay for about the 3 to 4 weeks. We're currently 6 days in on this, 40 days left to go. This was a little bit longer. Normally I do these for about 30 days to 35 days, somewhere in there. It was just a little bit longer because I went out to the July monthly on this, and we weren't quite to where the June monthlies expired yet. But it was a good time to put on that trade because it had pulled back a little bit, giving us a little more value in that put. Now, I will look to possibly enter an additional trade this week, but there's a lot of big economic announcements coming up here on Wednesday the 12th, so I want to wait, see how those play out, see if we get a big market move one direction or the other off of those, and then look to potentially add something at that point. And looking at our markets, looking at the SPX, pulled up here really and broke all new highs. Now remember, a week or so ago I was expecting a little bit of a dip in this and then a rally back up, a little bit of a dip, and I was expecting it to come up to these all-time highs and then have to see how it plays out. It did pop through them, but then it has largely just sort of chopped sideways right there at those all-time highs. I added in this new line here. Anytime I have 3 points or more that I can connect, excuse me, in a trend line, I like to do that because I think other people in the market start to look at this as well. So if there is a pullback here, right now my expectation would be that pullback might come down here to this old all-time high. That would be an area of support. And that also lines up with this upside trend line. So that gives some extra credence to a pullback here into this 5260, 5250 range, and then a possible move back up to higher highs from there. So that's just looking at this from a technical standpoint. that would be part of what I would expect, a pullback right into this range and then moving higher from there. Now, if we broke through this, I could see coming all the way back here to this 5,200. Now, barring any unusual Fed news or economic report news or whatever major news, those would be the two likely points of potential pullbacks. And then again, we're still in very bullish mode. Election years are also very bullish going into the few months before elections, regardless of who's running. And so all indications are a higher move from there in SPX. If we take a look at SPY, basically similar things in SPY. Very bullish on our up days, lots of volume. Down days, very little volume. This one had a little higher volume in it, but still not much volume on the down days, which tells me that the bulls are still in control here, buying heavily on those up days. If we look at VIX, volatility is very low, back almost to the all-time recent lows. So there's no one really buying insurance out there at this point. There's not a fear in the market. Low VIX environment, that's often when we continue the drift higher. Now, if we look specifically at RUT, though, we do see a little bit of a downtrend in RUT. I would expect the downtrend in RUT to come into this, probably into this 2013 range, maybe down to 2000 range, and then probably chop a little sideways from there, maybe rebound. But the RUT isn't having the same strength that the S&P is right now. But we have to keep in mind that the S&P strength is centered really around 7 or 8 key stocks. That's what keeps blasting that higher and higher, while the rest of the market is largely just chopping sideways. So anyhow, that's the market outlook at this point, and we'll see everyone in the community next week. And those of you that happen to see this on YouTube, if you have an interest, I'll put a link down below to where you can come take a look at the community if you'd like and see a little more about what that's about. Thanks so much, everyone. Take care.